Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, BabyMetal fan. And like you, or many of you, I just watched the new, we got a thunderstorm going on here, so I don't know if I'll lose power. I just watched the second appearance of BabyMetal on the First Take.
No reason why I can't understand it. Open your mind, we can understand it.
I want to talk about it a little. I'm not going to do a conventional reaction because I'm sure the internet is going to be full of people doing reactions to the performance itself, in which there'll be a lot of smiling and nodding and weeping, as there should be. Of course, I, as a serious person, was completely emotionally detached. I felt nothing throughout the performance.
You're the only one.
You know, it was satisfactory, but I was able to maintain a critical distance throughout. Okay, so that was a lie. I did find it sort of surprisingly emotional, and I say surprisingly because when I first saw that they were going to do the one, my first thought, and I'm sure I was not the only one who thought this, in fact I know I wasn't, my first thought was to think, okay, not the most dynamic of BabyMetal songs to do in this format, particularly because part of what the First Take often gives us is a kind of very acoustic, vocal-centered version of a song we already knew. But with the one, that's kind of all it is anyway. It's not like it's a radical departure to do it in this form. And of course, BabyMetal have done it, an quote-unquote unfinished, meaning acoustic version of this song before. So my first thought was, oh, I wish they'd done something off the new album, something we haven't heard performed before. So I was a little disappointed. And then we do it, and it was kind of short. You know, we basically only got one verse and a couple of choruses with some instrumental stuff in the middle, and it was effective. You know, it was a very nice rendition.
You're the only one. We are the one. We're the only one.
But the power of the thing, I think, you know, partly comes from Sue's vocals, which continue to get more mature and stronger and more compelling and more emotionally powerful as the sort of technical dynamics of her voice seem to improve constantly. I really appreciate that. And the other thing, of course, is the presence of Momoko, who I guess we now call momo-metal, in place of Yui. And that's what I want to talk about. And, you know, just to see her there with a microphone, participating, singing, I thought was kind of wonderful. You know, we've been in this sort of limbo for a while since Yui left the band, and there have been various sort of strategies to replace her or have some sort of stand-in for her. The band quickly realized that they couldn't simply function as a duo, so even though the official membership of BabyMetal was just Sue and Moa, we've had a sort of revolving door of third-person members, plus, you know, the Avengers, Chosen Seven, all that stuff. But as everybody knows, you know, for the last few years, the vast majority of that workload has fallen on Momoko. So it came as no great surprise that she was announced at the recent concerts around Fox Day as the official third member. You know, this prompted a lot of conversation and emotional outbursts of various kinds throughout the sort of BabyMetal fan community, some of which I found quite distressing and baffling and occasionally annoying. But I wanted to address it because I think it's, sort of the elephant in the room here. And the first thing I want to say is I get it. I get people who are upset about Yui not being part of the band anymore and thinking that this current manifestation of the group is a sort of significant departure from what they were, and they're no longer the same band, and they're not as interesting anymore, and the things that we loved about them are gone away, and all that sort of stuff. And I've seen some of that show up. I see that a lot in sort of fan forums, Facebook groups, and the like. And I've also seen versions of it in slightly less personal terms show up in some reviews. There was a Japan Times review of the new album which said, this is not the same band as it used to be, and they've lost what made them special, and the particularly the kawaii metal thing that made them distinctive has kind of gone away, and so they're not interesting anymore. And I get some of this, but I also reject it. And I think that it's a problem. Now, let me also say, if you don't like the new music, that's fine. Don't listen to it. If you're done with the band, you're done with the band. That's fine. But I do want to say something about the unwillingness to see the band change. And there are a number of sort of ironies here. One of the ironies, of course, is that the band are doing precisely what people claimed they wanted them to do, which is to function as a band, as opposed to a sort of marketing product compiled by other people. And by that I mean that they're functioning like a real band because they're evolving. They're changing. They're doing what Pink Floyd and the Beatles did. And I'm not saying that this is the same kind of music, but I'm saying that there have always been bands, if they have had any kind of longevity at all, if they've been around at all, the better bands have changed. They've evolved. And sometimes, in fact, always, that change has created conflict within the fan base as they've started to move away from some of the things for which fans liked them in the first place, right? And I think this is perfectly normal and natural. When we fasten onto something that we like, it becomes a surrogate for us. It becomes something that we are attached to, and whether this is a band or a sports team or any number of things, that those other entities carry our hopes, our aspirations, our emotional life in some ways, in ways that ordinary life cannot. We channel these impulses, these emotions into something outside ourselves, because often our own lives are sort of grey, ordinary, mundane. Not bad. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that sometimes these other entities, groups, the things that we decide we are fans of, carry a tremendous sense of our own identity and a certain responsibility for our happiness. And I think that's normal. I think that's what fandom is, right? But the downside of that is that when we have decided what it is that we like about a particular entity, we don't want to see it change. We don't want to see it go away. And this is particularly, I think, true of music, when often we connect to something that represents a version of ourselves as we were. And it's one of the reasons, I've said this before, that many people stop listening to music in their sort of 20s, early 30s. And they then listen to that same music for the rest of their lives. They don't discover new music. They hold on to the things from when they were themselves young. And their lives were full of promise and possibility. And they associate that music with that. And they don't want it to change. And they don't want to listen to new things that make them feel old or out of touch or disconnected in some ways. Because the music becomes a marker of our own mortality. I know this sounds preposterous, but I think it's really true. I think that when things that we love change, we feel our own aging in ways that makes us uneasy, unhappy. I think that's just how it is, right? As I said before, this is why people cry at weddings, right? You're presented with markers of change, and you feel the milestones of your own life. I think this is particularly true of a band like BabyMetal because what they represented when they first started, that kawaii quality, was very much about their own youth. And, there's, some people fetishize that in ways that I utterly reject. But others simply liked that sort of childlike effervescence, the energy of it, the innocence of it, coupled with that heavier music. And I totally get that. I totally see the appeal of that. But as is obvious, the band has grown up. And you can't continue to do that. And if you do have grown women pretending to be children, that's a problem, right? I mean, that's a problem, right? You can't infantilize grown women in order to satisfy whatever they represent to you. If we're going to credit these people as artists in their own right, if we're going to give them any agency, we have to let them grow up, evolve, and develop a new sound. And I think that's what they have done. And, whether you like the new album more than previous albums or less, again, that's up to you. But I think this idea that they've lost what they were is wrong, right? Because what they were initially was a unique hybrid product, right? A combination of elements that in some way should not work together, but does, right? We've said this many times. And I think they're continuing to do that. They've grown up, they've lost some of that kawaii quality, lost some of that childlike innocence, but that's inevitable. They're still making good songs. I personally think this album overall is stronger than the last one. I haven't decided yet whether I think it's stronger than Metal Resistance, but I think it's a good album. And I think that Japan Times piece, criticizing it for not being what it was before, is missing the point. And I would also say that some of the people who are critiquing them for not being what they were didn't like what they were when they first started. Right? They eventually came around to the idea that what BabyMetal were doing was something unique and interesting, and they therefore had to get on board with that. And that became the official position, right? The orthodox answer to why they were successful. And now that they've moved away from that, then we're rejecting that again. But all they're doing really is continuing to develop in unexpected ways, and that's what we want. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what artists do. I think it's worth asking why they chose to do this song for this particular format. And as I say, a lot of this is about introducing Momoko, not just as part of the current BabyMetal, but kind of retroactively working her into what BabyMetal were. And the one is the band and the fan base, right? That has always been the case. And so this is a kind of formal introduction. And I think it's very clear that this is directed at the fans. It's asking the fans to embrace who they are now, the personnel now, and to think of them as being the band moving forward in the same way that adding her name to the BabyMetal Death song is doing the same thing. It doesn't mean that they're trying to eradicate Yui from the past of the group, but I think it's an invitation to us to embrace what they are. And I commend them for that. And so I think, they're doing something quite different from what is usually done on the first take. And, if you compare something like the Atarashi Gakko performance, which I talked about last week, which is a wonderful performance in which the band came in and sort of addressed the first take format in terms of their own identity and performativity, and sort of remade the genre of that first take in their own image. And I think in some ways BabyMetal have done the opposite in the monochrome, that they were doing what First Take usually does, which is to sort of strip down their songs and focus on the vocal and the performance in that moment. And in this version, in this song, I think this is almost a kind of postscript, which is why it feels so brief, where they're not trying to broaden their fan base through the first take, and they're not trying to simply do what the first take always does. It's like a postcard to existing fans. That's what I think. It's like a message made for us to say, this is who we are now. Please come with us. We're still the one. You know, I guess that's all I'm going to say. I'm excited for where they go. I'm going to be seeing them in Atlanta, which is actually during Dragon Con weekend, and we're planning to have some sort of BabyMetal panel there on the Silk Road track. Hopefully that will work out prior to the concert. So, you know, if you're looking to go to Dragon Con, check that out. That's a Labor Day weekend. We'll see. We'll take it from there. I assume there's going to be a new album at some point, though. I mean, I feel greedy and ungrateful for even thinking about that yet, after people spent the last 2 years more complaining about the absence of new material. Now we have new material, and we're already looking for more. This is the nature of fandom, right? That we become sort of unconscious consumers, and we expect the objects of our fandom to constantly feed us in the ways that we want to be fed. And that's just not the way art and artists work. We have to give them room to find their authentic voices and to produce the things that matter to them. That to me is, otherwise it's just a conveyor belt producing the equivalent of a Happy Meal toy, right? Some sort of generic product which just is being fed to us all the time. That I see no point in that at all. I hope this doesn't sort of alienate people. Let me say it again. I get it. I get why people feel the sort of growing pains of the band personally. But I think this is what art is supposed to do. And if they lose you in the process, then so be it. But please try not to complain about what they are instead of what they were. That gets old fast. All right, that's all. Okay, what else? I'll have more to say about other songs on the album soon. I will also have more to say about my new book, which will come out later this summer, but will be available for pre-order pretty much now. A new novel which does have connections to BabyMetal obliquely and to Japanese folklore and culture within a specifically American setting. So, you know, if you're fans of this kind of music and other content on this channel, I think you'll like this book. I'll talk about it more in some dedicated videos coming up soon. All right, that's all for now. Thank you. As ever, please like, comment, subscribe, check out my Patreon page, check out my merchandise store. I recently had some issues with my merchandise store because I had a t-shirt that said, not all those who, there was a picture of a wizard on it, and it said, not all those who wander are lost, but some of y'all have the map upside down. And I thought that was quite funny. And then the design was taken down by Warner Brothers, if you can believe this, for copyright infringement. There's no image that had any connection to the Lord of the Rings movies or anything like that, but they're claiming copyright over the phrase, not all those who wander are lost, which to me is absurd, preposterous, unethical. But there you go. Nature of the beast. Welcome to global capitalism. All right. That's all. Thank you to my patrons. and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, bye.